I left the US as a Black woman, and here is why I'm not going back. And I know sometimes people like to say, never say never. And I'm not saying that I will never, ever go back to the US or visit the US. What I am saying is that I don't see myself going back to live long term, like going back to set up shop for years, being physically present there. I don't really see that happening. And I'm going to speak from my personal experience, but I can also guarantee that if you, as anyone, whether you're Black, brown, anyone, if you experienced life outside of the US for an extended period of time or just enough time, you will realize that the US, I won't say it's not a real place, but you will realize that you have been lied to in a lot of different ways. And you'll realize how much better you feel living life outside of the US. So, with that said, I want to share why I may never go back to live in the US. And this wasn't impulsive, it was instinctual, right? Now, the first time I left the US, so a quick backstory is that I spent all of my adult life in the US, but I was actually born in the Caribbean. And so from birth, I always knew what life outside of the US was, and then eventually I went to the US, did all the things, became an American citizen, served in the military as well, did all the things they say to do, right? Bought my first house prior to the military. So before the military, bought my first house at 23. So I was pretty young. That was, by society standard, considered a huge accomplishment for a young person, right? And had my first real job at like 19. Before that, I worked like fast food, small jobs. By the grace of God, I was able to get into what I kind of really wanted to do at the time. I landed my dream job at 25, being a commercial airline flight attendant, traveled all over the world. So the first time I traveled outside of the US after, living in the US was to Mexico, beautiful Mexico. Ooh, it's warm. The sun is like shining on me. Thank you, sunshine. Oh man. So yes, the first time I left the US was to Mexico. That was, I think I was 20 at the time or 21. That was when I was working my first real job in like the financial field. I didn't have a degree yet, by the way. I was working on it, my associate's degree, but God was like, apply. And I was like, they're not going to hire me, but they did. That was from working fast food. I've never had like any type of job like that in the financial field. So I was I felt really lucky and favored by God to have gotten that job and then have gotten multiple promotions, right? But anyway, the first time I left the US was to Mexico, a trip to Mexico. I went to this all-inclusive resort. It was the Excellence, I believe, Playa Mujeres, one of the best resorts in Mexico. And oh my gosh, I had a blast. I was like, this weather, the culture, a lot of things reminded me of back home, back in the Caribbean. The people, oh my gosh, those Mexicans were so kind. They were some of the kindest people I have ever met in my entire life. They remembered my order. So I remember we went to this restaurant within the resort and we had breakfast and I ordered some like natural juice or something like that. The next day I went back and the server remembered my order. I think he remembered my name too. And, they may have been trained that way to remember people, and it may be helpful too for tips and stuff, but it just was so genuine. And I was like, I have to do this every year. I was like, I have to take a vacation. I was like 20, y'all. This is like my first real vacation. I was like, any opportunity that I get, I am not saving any of my PTOs. I am taking a vacation. And I met a lady that was at the resort, an older lady. She wasn't really that old, maybe in her 50s, 40s. And she said that she has been to that resort 21 times. And I could see why. She was talking about how she loves Mexico and all these things. Now, of course, traveling to a resort is very different from actually living in a place, like having a lived experience, like going grocery shopping, experiencing the healthcare, the day-to-day life, the school system, if you have children that you plan on putting in schools, different things like that, like electricity, water issues, different things like that, right? It's totally different. When you're at a resort, you have Wi-Fi, you have water all the time, electricity all the time. You're not really worried about healthcare and different things like that. So it's very different. However, that was my first like aha moment. Like, wow, this feels good. And then I started to do like cruises and different things like that. And the first time I spent an extended time. So after that, after becoming a flight attendant at like 25 and joining the United States Air Force as well, I started to travel a lot. Like I've probably been to over 40 states in the US and uh, dozens of countries and countless cities, okay, within those different countries across like 5 different continents, right? So from South America, Latin America, across Europe, Mother Africa, the continent of Africa, all over the Caribbean, North America. Now, in regards to Asia, Southeast Asia in particular, the first time I traveled outside of Southeast Asia was in 2022 when I had just decided to quit my flight attendant job for reasons that I have spoken about on this channel, my main channel. You can also check it out somewhere here. And it was time. It was time for me to leave the rat race. It does seem like a glamorous job and it can be very amazing and you meet some incredible people, which I have. And I'm so grateful and thankful for that opportunity to have landed, my dream job with my dream airline and have been able to go to different places with friends and just acquaintances and just random places that I would have booked a trip to. So I'm incredibly grateful for those experiences, but it was time for me to let it go. The anxiety that came with it, the limited time that I really had to be present, and just a lot of other things that I won't really get into in this video, but it was time. And entrepreneurship was really calling my name. And I was like, you know what, I feel more fulfilled doing the things that I love to do on my own time. And so it was time. And so I decided to take a sabbatical right after quitting to Southeast Asia, to the beautiful Bali, Indonesia, right? That was my first time on the continent of Asia. And we spent an extended time in Bali, Indonesia, I think a month or over a month. And then after that, we immediately traveled to Thailand, so nonstop. So we were in Southeast Asia for a while. And when I tell you that that was the most therapeutic experience of my entire life, it was so refreshing. It was so healing. It was so nurturing. I felt nurtured by Mama Bali. Okay. It's just something that I can't really explain. You really just have to experience it for yourself. And we were also there with limited Wi-Fi, limited data, because we just ended up didn't really get data on our phones. We were going to do it we were supposed to do it by the airport, and then we decided, oh, it's going to be cheaper when we get out of the airport, but it just didn't end up really happening. And so we never really had data while we were out, except for if we were like at the villa that we were staying at, or at villas that we were staying at, or at a cafe or something. So it really forced us to be truly present in the moment. And that was so healing and so refreshing. And the people, so not just the land and the experiences, but the people, how genuine they were and how kind they were and just authentic they were and happy, right? Even the people who just had their small shops set up nothing fancy. They were just always happy and willing to help without expecting. So I grew up in a culture where when people really helped you a certain way, especially strangers, they are expecting something, especially something monetary. This was not the case in Bali. A lot of the people were just truly genuine. And uh, we also went to look. This is how serious I was about leaving the US at that time in 2022. We started looking at land and even though, yes, I know that buying land and different things like that, it is different over there. Someone have to lease the land for a while or partner with a local in order to kind of like own it and different things like that. So we were looking at all of those things. We went to look at land. I saw this land that I almost bought for 20,000 US dollars. And no kidding, my business was doing well at the time, as I was saying. And it helped me to be able to quit my job earlier. It helped me to actually fulfill that goal of quitting my job. I did plan on quitting my job for an entire year, so it wasn't spontaneous, right? And so I almost bought the land, but I was like, maybe not now. I'll wait. And that's how serious I was about leaving. And so anyway, we came back to the US, did not want to come back, you guys. I was like, I don't want to come back, or I don't want to go back. And so what happened then was a seed was planted. Like, Southeast Asia could be home, or outside of the US could be home. But it wasn't until I realized that America just started to not feel like a real place anymore. It did not feel safe anymore. And I can talk about experiences all day, but we would be in nice areas. Like, we lived in decent areas, relatively decent areas, like even Dallas, in Highland Park, if you know anything about Dallas, Texas, and Highland Park. And we experienced some things that it was just not safe. We lived in another area in Dallas where it was supposed to be a safe area. And we would hear gunshots at night. Like, I would be on the floor. I would jump off the bed. I'm like, what is going on? I thought this was supposed to be a safe area. And I had my car broken into at one point. Well, no, I think we probably left the door open and they stole some cash that we had in there. So that was probably our fault. Then, of course, you had the constant like school shootings and events at like malls and different things like that. And you guys, I was always on constant alert because I remember also one time while living in Texas, so I lived in New Jersey mostly for most of my time living in the US, and then I eventually moved to Texas, okay, for context, for the past 3 years or so prior to leaving the US. So I remember this shooting event that happened at a local mall, right, very close to us, that we would go to every now and then. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what if we were there? Like, what if we were there? And so I found myself always on constant alert in the event of something, if something were to happen. I'm at the movie theater. I'm looking at the different exit signs. If something were to happen, where's the closest exit? Where am I going? Of course, you want to always be on alert no matter where you are. But to live in that state, it's not fun. It's not fun. It is not healthy. That's very stressful. And I was just always on constant alert at the malls and different things like that. And when we finally had our son in 2023, I was like, I don't want to live like this. I'm definitely not sending him to public schools. Definitely not. The public schools is a joke in the US, not even just the violence, right? The violence is one thing. They do not have guns under control in the US and in schools, but also just the indoctrination, that's happening in the schools, that's taking place. It is just getting so backwards. It just something that we no longer wanted to, be a part of, right? And so we were like, listen. So at that point, I was planning on homeschooling, right? I was like, okay, if I'm to have children, I'm definitely homeschooling them, because these school systems are a joke, you know. So I would say things like that. But here's what immediately changed once I left. Number one, I left the US somewhat a year into my postpartum journey, which most people won't really consider a year being postpartum, but close to a year of being postpartum, not yet a year. So we left when our son was about 10 months. And I had such a hard time losing that postpartum weight, right? And I do believe it was the foods that I was eating. My diet changed a little bit. Like, I started eating things that I never used to eat. That's my fault of my own. But I noticed that the foods that I was eating, it started to really swell me up. Like, I started to have like adverse reaction towards the foods that I wasn't supposed to have. Like, being raised in the Caribbean, you kind of just eat whatever. To be honest, that's how I was raised. And so when I remember when I came to the U.S., that's why I decided to go plant-based for a long time. Um, is because I was so afraid of the food in the US, like the dairy, the eggs, just everything. I was like, I'm not eating it. I don't trust this system. So I went plant-based, right? But during my pregnancy and stuff, I wasn't. And I just could feel the difference, like with eating certain things. I was just like, why does my body feel like this? And I was literally swelling my face. You guys, when I left the US, I immediately felt the change, right? When I moved to Thailand, it was easier for me to lose weight. You could see it in my face, like my chunky cheeks, they were gone. I lost like 20 pounds within, I don't know, maybe 2 months, 3 months, or something like that. It was easier for me to be active. My nervous system just felt more relaxed. I was not on constant alert. I would be able to walk in my neighborhood at 11 p.m. at night. This is not something that I would ever do by myself as a woman, okay, a black woman in the United States of America, the regardless of the neighborhood. It could be Highland Park, Dallas. It does not matter. I would not try that. But here in Thailand, I just never really have second thoughts about walking. I remember when I was on my weight loss journey, right? And I was trying to get my steps in and stuff. And one night I was just like, oh, I didn't really get enough steps today. Let me go walk outside by myself. I felt incredibly safe. And also, we live in a more tucked away community. They have security guards throughout the community, 24/7, cameras throughout the community as well. And even without that, outside of that, I just genuinely felt incredibly safe. And that's not something that I would try inside the US. So immediately after leaving, I felt my nervous system relaxed. The things that used to stress me out, per se, or the things that I used to worry about in the US, I no longer worried about after leaving the US. And so I can't tell you how much more relaxed and calm and peaceful I feel now living outside of the US. And you know what's interesting, in 2024, I had a clear vision. Okay. I am not a prophet or anything like that, but I talked about this in 2024, by the way, right before the election, like months before the election. And a dream that I felt like God gave me, right? Of these like military like personnel, supposedly be a part of law enforcement of some kind, but they had ill intentions. And we were in the house, and the person was saying to me, we have to go now, grab your passport, we have to go now. This is during the time that we were somewhat like preparing to leave. And I just had this overwhelming feeling that we had to leave now. The plan was to leave March of 2025, but I just felt my instincts, my entire being, my entire body. I felt God was saying like, no, you gotta leave now. Like by October of 2024, you have to leave, okay? And by the grace of God, we made it happen. And in another video, I will talk about how we move so fast. And if I were to leave the US in the next 3 to 6 months, exactly what I would do. So be sure to subscribe, okay? And, follow this channel so that you can stay updated to the next videos that I do. But the dream was so distinct. These people were coming after us for some strange reason. And the person was like, we have to go grab your passport. And I was like, where are we going? Where are we going? And they said a country. I said, where? You have to say it clearer so I know for sure. And they said the country. Um, Funny enough, this is a country that we're in. But, you know, I felt like that dream was for a reason, because if you look at what is happening right now today, right? I'm recording this video Monday, January 2026. 26. Oh, that's crazy. I'm recording this video January 26, 2026 on a Monday. And if you see what is currently happening, you will realize that the US does not feel real right now. It does not feel like a safe place. It's no longer safe for children, for women. If you look brown, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be black, white. I mean, we saw what happened to that white woman, right? We saw what happened to that white woman. So it's not even about color really at this point, right? We see what's happening. Like, it's almost not real. America is almost becoming like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's almost looking like the Holocaust or something, right? The Germany incident, if you don't know about it, you can look it up. But it's almost becoming like the Holocaust. It is sad. Like, America is supposed to be such a great nation. You know, you'll never. I never believed that America would become a place of like equality, so to speak. Like, with being a black woman in America, I have felt microaggression. I have seen how they treated people like, you know, Mexicans. And it's so sad because when you go to Mexico, they treat you so well. They treat Americans so well. But when they go to America, they treat them so poorly. And I never thought that that was something that was going to get better. I never saw it, but I never saw this coming. I never thought that it would come this far to where they are sending federal agents against their own people, innocent people. We're not talking about criminals here. It started out like that, you know, arrest the criminals, the illegals, you know, but then it turned to, oh, arrest all people, you know, so we can get our numbers up. It doesn't matter if they're American citizens. Let's just arrest them at Target and then drop them off at Walmart when they're able to prove that they're Americans, right? They look brown, they have an accent. Let's arrest them. Like, who wants to live in a country like that? I don't care if you are brown, white. Who would want to live in a society like that? It is mind blowing. People from different countries are looking at what is happening in America right now and they're like, this can't be real. Like, what movie am I watching? But Americans have become so desensitized to crime and violence. I don't even think half of the American people realize what is really, really happening, which is really sad. And some people may think it's going to get better, you know, after the term, the 4-year term. Some people may think that, oh, this is just a test. This is just, you know, one-off incidences where there's just some arresting American citizens. It's not just one-off incidences. It is dozens and dozens and dozens of incidences. And so this decision to leave the US is about my family's future, right? It's not about running away, because I don't believe that you can run away from everything. Anything that you think that you're running away from in the US to go to another country, believe that you may find that, right? If it's some type of microaggression, maybe some type of racism, you may find that. So I don't believe in necessarily running away, but I believe in self-preservation and going where I feel more at peace, go where I feel like I am treated well, and go where I have less chances of me just randomly being endangered just because. of the color of my skin. So yeah, I believe that America right now is pretty much like Babylon right now, and it's a fall coming. I can feel it in my spirit. I know this to be true. And I think that's one of the reasons why in 2024 I felt this strong urge that it was time to go. This was more like towards the beginning, and then during the middle, we were like, we are leaving. And we made it happen within like 2 to 3 months. And again, I will share another video on that and how we made it happen, even though we had, obligations and different things like that. In the US, we had things to sell and all of these things. But I'm telling you that if it is your desire, if you feel that pull, if you feel that call to leave the US, you should, you can do it, and it can work for you. It does not matter your situation. I've seen all the different types of situation, whether you have children, you're married, you're taking care of an elderly parent. Different people make different arrangements that work for them. We left as a family, and we are a growing family right now. We are planning to have another baby here in abroad, right? I'm currently expecting, I should say that. And so it does not matter your situation, you can make it work. If you are on disability, okay, you can make it work as well. I promise you. But yeah, these are some of the reasons, just a sliver of some of the reasons why I decided to leave the US as a Black woman, and why I may not go back. Why I may not go back to live long term. Life outside the US to me is way more beautiful. Again, like I said, I have traveled to dozens of countries, and the culture, just the way of living, the community that I see in other parts of the world, it is just so different from the US. The US has this individualized or individualistic society and way of living that it just makes it so much harder to live there. So anyway, I think I have said enough for this video. If you liked this video, be sure to like it, subscribe if you want to hear more from me, because I have more coming. Okay, I have more coming. Again, it's Shai Bivia, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Be blessed.